Maybe it's not supposed to happen today. Now it's ready to go live. Not yet. Okay, we finally did it here after 2 attempts, 20 minutes, and a lot of cussing. Welcome to episode 21 of the How Does That Happen podcast. This is a podcast about unusual record holders, should be record holders, and want to be record holders. Today, for episodes 21, I have a special guest who is a should be record holder if they're keeping track of this particular statistic. This man had the highest rated talk show on the island of Guam for 10 years running. My good friend, the man, the myth, the legend, Alabama born, Hawaii raised, Guam famous, Myk Powell. Myk, welcome to the show.
I'm going to make this even more interesting. It's Alaska born.
Oh, that's right. Your family's from
Hawaii
Alabama, but your dad was in the Army in Alaska.
That's the military family for you. My mom was just following my dad around through basic training, and he was going to Alaska to learn how to survive in the snow.
I didn't think people could get pregnant in Alaska in the winter.
It's difficult. It's difficult. You have to have a special heating clearance. But it's a long story. You don't want to hear it.
Well, fortunate for us, they got the clearance.
I can forge a birth certificate if you want one.
I only use Hawaiian forged birth certificate. So born in Alaska. Did you spend time in Alabama or just families from Alabama?
I spent that families from Alabama, and I spent the summers there.
We're not talking about your stints in juvenile hall. We're talking about actual family visits.
Never been there.
Juvenile hall?
No, Alabama. Excluding the juvenile detention.
Well, it was one of those A states. Anyway, from Alaska, and then you started your radio career on the island of Hawaii. Is that right?
Oahu. Oahu, yes. I started that in the mid-'70s. At that time, far away, far-flung reaches of the United States, like Hawaii and Alaska, the station engineer could issue a license. You had to have a first-class radio license to be on the air back then. Now, of course, it's all computerized. You don't even need to be in the studio.
How old were you when you started?
3 days after my 15th birthday was the first time that the man called Makele said anything on the air.
Now, did you have to have a work permit at the time, or you just pirating this stuff?
I was just pirating. It was a whole different attitude back then on the radio.
It was the 70s. It was Hawaii. The FCC wasn't paying attention.
No, they wasn't.
Okay, so we got to, before we get into your illustrious Guamanian record, we got to get a background on how a 15-year-old kid in Hawaii suddenly ends up on the air on a major radio station.
There's a very famous DJ who's still on the air there in the morning, Michael W. Perry. At that time, he was on KKUA, and he came out to do a pep rally for our high school football team, and I did the Uncle Mikey theme song, and I won a KKUA homegrown album.
Wait, hold on. You were leading the theme song. You were.
No. Yeah, it's we do the Uncle Mikey. Then I won the record, so I won the album of the greatest hit. It's a homegrown album, and it's something that they've done there for years, and it's really.
So this was album with all the best of his studio stuff, or this is Hawaiian musical artists?
Hawaiian musical artists, mostly high school.
Really?
Mostly high school, yeah, and they're very talented. They can take him in the studio, they put them together with some good sounds. Seawind, Cecilio, and Capono all came out of those things.
So you really these talent contests, homegrown.
Yeah.
So you went to pick up your free album,
and Captain Cook was on the air. And so I said, "That's Captain Cook." I was just listening to him on the radio. I was listening, and he goes, "You come here. Answer these phones and write down what they want to hear." And I started answering the phones, and there were girls on the other end. And I said, "This is probably better than football."
A girl will actually talk to you. I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah. So I that's how I started. And then, as will happen in radio. When it's live and you don't know what's going to be on the air next, the program director ended up taking his own life one afternoon while I was producing the Dan Cook show, Captain Cook show, and everybody ran to the office where he had done it, and
Oh,
nobody was on the air, and so that's how I got to be on the air the first time.
wow.
But I was in the studio, the cart ran out, and I cracked the mic and started talking, and I haven't shut up since.
Baptism by fire.
That's
So we got to go back to Captain Cook. First of all,
yeah.
as we all know, Captain Cook was not the most popular historic figure to pass through Hawaii. So what made a DJ think that, hey, Captain Hook would be a good hook? Captain Cook would be a good hook on the island of Hawaii, or in the state of Hawaii.
He was liked at the beginning. He was a very malevolent land taker, if that's what you want to call it. He but then when he left, he got turned around by a storm, and the Hawaiians said, "Well, if he was a true god, he wouldn't have to turn around because of a storm." So they ate him. That's that's the story anyway.
It just strikes me as an odd inspiration to go with that name. But
That's
hey,
I never thought of it
it's
until
a good hook. I might
until
I might have gone with like Captain Crunch or something. I don't know. But that's just me. Okay, so you jump on there. They come out. There's a suicide at the station. There's all this chaos, and they said, "Good job, Mike. When can you come back and do a? We need you to fill in this guy's show. He's no longer with us."
I finished that show. I finished
Really?
that. Yeah, that was.
Did you know how to load the carts and do all? This is old school radio. We didn't have push one button.
This is way old school homemade studio, and yeah, that's what I did. I produced the show. I just made sure that all the songs and the commercials were all lined up in the machines, ready to go.
What made them trust a 15-year-old to do such a seemingly difficult or responsible
They
person needing task?
they didn't ask me, and I didn't tell. So I was there when it happened. Nobody wanted me to go on the air and do any of that. But as it turned out, it was the responsible thing to do at the time, and it was incredible. They had all the people that I went to high school with were all listening to me and stuff, and it was fun. It was a dynamite. I was calling everybody on their landline before cell phones.
So you're a radio personality at age 15, and you're still going to school.
Yeah,
And what time were you on the air?
I produced the Captain Cook show between 2 and 6, and then
PM.
I was at PM.
So you had to ditch your last class. How did you pull this one off?
That's there were arrangements made, shall we say?
So the coach wanted to talk to someone, or the teacher was
Yeah.
okay.
So that they were very encouraging of working for real at the radio station. Everybody was at the time. Little did they realize what a poor decision it is at that point to put your life into radio, because it's going to evolve away. It's gone now.
Well, now you like me are also a comedian. So was it the same rush as the first time a comedian gets on stage and gets hooked when you got that first few minutes on the radio?
The radio is like it's a comedy in slow motion, because you'll do the joke on the air, and then you finish the show, then you go home, and you get a call from inside and say, "Hey, I heard that, ha ha ha," and there's your laugh. So there's nothing until that point. It's all theater of the mind and what goes on inside your head. So there's a lot more stuff happening when you're on the radio, just stuff. Making sure the cart machines, well, not now, and I make sure that the computer programs are lined up in every cart. They still call them cart machines on the software they use.
Even though it's all automated now.
It's
Still.
all automated now, but they couldn't teach old jocks new words.
So you're 15. You're producing the Captain Cook show, and then you got your own time spot.
2 in the morning till 6 in the morning.
Oh wait. Okay, let's. There's only 24 hours in a day. I know Hawaii's different. You're a few hours behind the rest of us, but you're going to school. You're playing football. You're overnighting on the radio and producing the morning show.
And dating a 21-year-old.
You were like a high school multitasker. Did you win most likely to?
Most likely to drop dead at 3 in the afternoon is what I won. There were a lot of times I would wake up and so I was also at the comedy club at this time.
At age 15?
And so there were times when I would have to wake up and go to the studio or wake up and go to the comedy club. And I lived right on the edge of Waikiki, so I'd get up and start walking. And man, there's a lot of people out for 5:30 in the morning. Uh-oh, I think I'm going to the wrong place. It was fun. There was a time for a couple of years when I would work 44 hours a week at the station, and it would all between Friday night at 6 and Monday morning at 6.
Well, did you quit football, or were you still playing the games?
I played the games.
So what? You would just leave the station for 2 hours, come back, jump back in.
I hope nobody got hurt.
Did you ever do a show in your football uniform?
That's interesting. Of all the questions I expected, yes, I did on Halloween.
No kidding. Well, that was convenient. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because I'm done with football practice, you got to walk home. Hey, I think I'll just trick or treat along the way. Got a helmet. We're all set to go. But I did. I have worn it on the air, the football uniform. Yeah.
Okay, so you
come to think of it, I have.
Hey, I think that might be right there. How does that happen? And not too many people have dressed up in their high school football uniform to do radio while dating a 21-year-old.
Yeah, that's with one arm tied behind my back.
I don't think I did one of those things successfully. So what was your first radio show in Hawaii? Did you have a name for it? And what was the theme /
When I first started out, it was The Man Called Makaele. Makaele means crazy eyes in Hawaiian. And
Crazy eyes,
and then very similar to black eyes in Samoan. And so I played center, and the helmet was always coming down and hitting my nose, so I always had black eyes. And so they called me Makaele. The Man Called Makaele, the musical-minded DJ.
So did you do a lot of pigeon when you were on the air?
I was totally at that point was pigeon.
Because you were raised around Samoans and Hawaiians and football. That's probably most of your friends.
Our offensive line was Fatu Papali Itolavai Potae, Myk Powell, Etuali Suafoa, and Ipua Tanavasa.
Jeez, I'd hate to be that uniform manufacturer trying to spell all those names right.
Well, they had plenty of room on the shoulder pads to sign. That's how I got Mike with 3 letters. That's all they put on mine. M-Y-K. That's the little guy.
Right on your football uniform? I thought that was your radio name. It was both?
Let's do a little comedy.
Oh, and this is very serious. We're trying to get historical. I don't make news. I don't want fake news. I don't want make news. We just want the facts, sir. No.
Okay, I promise I will journey back into the realm of factum.
So how does a 15-year-old you got an afternoon show, you got a 21-year-old girlfriend, how do you not just become a Glory Days guy and you move forward from that and become even more successful? I mean, that's peaking pretty early, my friend.
That's my problem. I designed it where I peaked too early. That was the whole idea. Radio evolved, and it didn't evolve in what I believe is a positive direction. There's a lot of people that think it goes back to the Clinton administration when they deregulated it, and Colin Powell and his son Myk Powell, who ran the FCC.
And the irony, same last name, destroying your industry.
Yeah, he did. It was interesting. The day that they signed that the bill that basically said anybody can own as many radio stations as they want as long as they pay the FCC.
So the monopolization of radio pretty much culled the herd of DJs, station staff, person. You got the 5-in-1 cookie cutter stations and the conglomerates.
Now, the cookie cutter is a very good example because you go stamp in each city, you just put up the same radio station, and it doesn't really work. You have to get to know the. It was the original, not the original, but it was uh, mass media at the time. Uh, that you were able to influence people. You check in with your favorite DJ and find out what's going on. And the DJs, there was always one or two personalities in every marketplace that could last their whole life. It's like the python that ate the egg. You can see it travel down the body as it goes down, and then at the end, you're a radio listener. That's what everybody's dream was at the time because it had happened that way for decades.
Once you were okay, so you're 15. You know you want to keep doing radio. What was your goal at the time? Just keep having fun and dating 21-year-olds, or did you aspire to a new position?
I found out later in life that there's a time it's not cool to keep saying I scored an older chick.
Was there some jealousy issues at the station with your little cocky 15-year-old, 16-year-old with the hot girlfriend and the?
I had more problems at school than I did at the radio station. Radio station just thought it was fun. It was a bunch of fun people having. Coral Makes Me Feel Good was the station was Coral, and Coral Makes Me Feel Good was the whole the whole ad campaign for the station. And it did. It just made you feel good. All the positive music and good times. Yeah, you get lulled into a sense that it's going to keep happening.
So, what kind of grief did you get at school?
The same jealousy stuff.
Petty stuff, yeah.
Yeah, how come he used to go home? At the end of the day, we're all standing around and said, "What are you going to do now?" I think I'm going to go home. I think I'm going to go do my homework. I said, "What are you doing, Mike?" I think I'm going to go have sex and beer.
So I take it you did not graduate with honors.
Oh yeah, sure I did. I was honors all the time. So no, I did. I didn't. I graduated well in my class in the middle of my class.
Hey, at least you stuck it out. I'm sure your parents were happy. Now, what was your mother's take on this whole thing?
Oh, my mom, she loved the whole idea. She didn't like the idea that I was working the hours I was working, and the radio station is not in the best part of town. And so I was traveling around that area at night, early, from between midnight and 6 in the morning. And she didn't like that. But I did produce the Tommy Sands Hawaii Top 40 countdown every Sunday. And she found out that I was in the studio with Tommy Sands, and she asked if she could come down.
Of course, you obliged her, right?
Yeah. She was like a 15-year-old groupie.
Yeah, if you can make moms giddy like that, you're doing something as a son. So how many years in Hawaii radio?
From 15 to 30, so 15 years.
That's a long stretch in radio. 15 years.
That's all of it. It was never a long stretch at any single radio station, but it was a long stretch for being in Hawaii radio. That's for sure.
Would you normally quit or get fired? A combination.
Combination. You learn how to get fired in creative ways, so you don't have to quit.
What's an example of a creative firing where you don't have to quit?
I knew you were going to ask this. Okay.
You
I
can
was
give us the edited version.
I was a younger man then than am now, and I knew I wanted to get out of this radio station. There's an opportunity for another show with some friends at a different station, but I couldn't get fired because then you can't collect unemployment. So I peed on his desk. And
Termination by urination.
and because he had his brand new Macintosh uh, uh, computer on his
We
desk.
call it Macintosh in the continental 48 states. Okay.
Macintosh was what it was called when we first saw it.
Man, you are old.
Yeah, they didn't even know how to pronounce it back when I started. I tell you what.
So, why did you need to collect unemployment? I thought you were going to go work at your friend's station.
But it's the class. I never quit. I always got fired. So it's a badge that I wore.
All right. Well, if any of officials of the Hawaiian unemployment department are listening, this statute of limitations. You can't come after his money.
Oh, true. Then I should go ahead and tell you the whole story. It's interesting that move did go on to create a very a fun. My favorite show that I ever did was the Breakfast Flakes, and it was Hawaii. And it's called Full Service Radio. So that means you've got your weather, your traffic, your news, a little bit of commentary, and wisecracking DJ. That takes you through every morning drive, and you get used to it. That's who you hang out with in the morning. The same thing at night. The people that work in the kitchens and the restaurants, they get to know their nighttime DJs, and they become friends with them, which is what it was for a long time. Now, with the conglomerate stations, you get the person in the studio saying, "It's a Tuesday afternoon. That was Fleetwood Mac. And now here's a song." Doing those basic non-content rap that would go through, and it would broadcast all over the country. And they don't have to say what time it is or any of that.
Right.
They took all the personality out of the radio jocks, and then they started naming the stations, the Bob FM, Jack FM, Myk FM. So they named the stations so that they get personality out of them, but it didn't really work, did it?
Oh, I would. Most people would argue not. That now we have podcasts. People like, why do we want to listen to a canned radio station? So you go through all this.
At the time, it was what you found out what was happening at your school, what was happening, on Oahu. It was the locals, and on the outer islands, there are jocks that are very, very talented that are serving just Kauai, serving just Maui. That's living.
Yeah, you can't do that from Jack FM in Charlotte, North Carolina. We realize that. So, all right. So you were in Hawaii 15 years, and then you saw the writing on the wall and said, "I'm heading toward Japan. Let's go to Guam."
No, I saw the writing on the wall, and I was headed towards the mainland to do comedy in October, and I was in Chicago. That's where my brother was at the time, and I get there, and they said it was cold, so I brought socks.
Cold for you guys, 62, 63.
Yeah. You bring socks, and you go, okay, now I'm warm. But that was the coldest I've ever been. I get a call from out of the blue from a fellow who had heard my show in Hawaii when he was on vacation from Guam and wanted to hire me to do mornings at a CHR, contemporary hit radio, with adult lead, AOC, CHR. They give all these different acronyms that the different formats. But we just had a fun radio station and did that for a while.
So had you heard of Guam? Did you know anything about Guam before you took the job?
I did not. I had not heard about it. But what I did learn is I grew up on Oahu, and I grew up as the only guy on the football team. It was interesting the way I was prepared to do this show on Guam, because I had to act as the intermediary between the military, which occupies the prime real estate on the island, and the landowners and the indigenous people whose land was taken from them after World War II. And so I was able to act as an intermediary from both sides of that. And
So you jumped right into local politics. You didn't have any idea.
I had no idea, and I didn't realize that the contact it's a contact politics in Guam is a contact sport, and I didn't realize that until I had been there for a while.
How long? Well, for a while. Like, how long did it take to transition from the CHR to where you started doing talk radio?
I went to Hawaii for a year, practiced on doing the talk radio, and then came back and just jumped right into it on Guam.
Is it like stand up and improv? Is it a completely different muscle?
It truly is. You have to write as if there's not going to be a phone call, there's not going to be a traffic update, there's not going to be a weather, news, any other part of the show except you talking, and you have to be able to fill 4 hours a day. That's a lot of writing, but it's fun.
But Guam, I guess maybe I'm totally wrong. I've been to Guam once, performed it for the Navy there and the Air Force. But is there enough content and controversy in Guam to fill 4 hours a day of talk radio, or did you spill back into American politics, world affairs, etc.?
You spill back into the politics, and it's interesting, as the right wing radio stations, Rush Limbaugh, G. Gordon Liddy, all of them took off first on Guam. It was amazing. And
is that because of the military presence, that the soldiers and airmen were listening?
Rush at that time was on AFRTS, Armed Forces Radio Television, and so they had them, but it was actually one of the stations in Hawaii that said, you can't just be broadcasting this. I pay good money for this. And I have to run Laura Ingram too. That's all part of the technical syndication stuff you got to work out. And so they were on there on Guam and Hawaii and any place that they're listening to AFRTS. So that does put it out there. But it was just, and that's when I saw what Rush Limbaugh was doing. The man was brilliant at radio, structuring the hour, working the clock, every advantage, taking care of every advantage so that you have the number one radio station. And he was good at that.
So you're saying you didn't like the guy's politics, but you learned from him as a professional broadcaster.
You can watch what he did, and I've watched him. Because I either came on right before him or right after for about 12 years.
Wow.
I listened to a lot of him, and I just remember the one time I was sitting in the studio getting ready for my show, and he goes to Maui for a phone call. Rush Limbaugh does. And he goes, there's Paul on Maui wants to talk about the liberal agenda. And I know what he's going to say. And then I'm just going to have to point out to him that da-da-da-da-da-da. And then all the people will chant with me saying, yeah, you're wrong, I'm right. And then he thanked him for a call and hung up on a guy. He never answered the phone.
Well, I noticed that was a long time tactic. If anyone had a contrary position to some of the real extreme political talk show hosts, they would never directly answer the question. It would be the avoid, evade, attack.
Yeah, and you still see it today. You see, you still, that's exactly what's going on today. Attack them, accuse them of doing exactly what you're doing. That's where it's gotten. And I had in in uh, in Hawaii when I was doing talk radio there, it was the Kanakapila morning show. Kanakapila was when the Hawaiians would get together and they play music and they tell jokes and they have a good time. And that's what I thought it was. It's Kanakapila. Uh, and nobody that has that type of friendly, accepting attitude gets anywhere on in talk radio. You don't get.
Yep.
Uh,
And that's the same, and like you think of politics, but everything now, social media now, it's who can elicit the most anger and emotion, push buttons. If you're not gonna be a button pusher, you're gonna be considered too vanilla or too mundane to make it, right?
yeah, and that's the that's the scary part. Is I'd have people just call me Pollyanna and different things, and so you never argue with the guy, and
So they'd get mad that you weren't arguing.
I just point out the absurdity of what they're saying, and then say how would you respond to that? And I never went after attacking people really, but I'm sure that it got that way. It seemed that way at times for people listening, just because I was the golden boy on the left that could keep the conversation going.
Well, I would imagine you have some spillover if you went after Rush, that you're doing your show and there's some people, hey, I'll just keep listening, and
Yeah.
had some extreme views from what you were doing and probably got them pretty riled up.
Yeah, well, that's what the program directors say it's for. It didn't favor me as much because then I just get the people that really like Rush and really hate me.
But isn't a strong emotion better than neutral in a way? I mean,
No, just spell
no.
it right. MYK. Just spell it right. You're absolutely right. Anytime you get separated from the crowd and looked at, then you're succeeding in radio.
So once you took the talk show position in Guam from Hawaii, how long did it take you to ascend to the #1 spot?
Um, for me, one day.
Yeah.
Well,
So you're saying
I was #1 when we started.
So you're saying you were #1 because there was no one else out there? This is
That's
all a
what
fraud. This whole interview, you were the only talk radio station.
we were the only English speaking talk radio station.
Oh, you weren't bilingual? You didn't speak Chamorro or have a translator?
I learned enough Chamorro to get my butt kicked in bars. That's about
So
it.
for our non-Guamanian educated friends, Chamorro is the indigenous people of the island of Guam. And there are a number of islands in the Pacific they also reside on, right?
The Micronesia, the residents of Micronesia are by definition Chamorro. And it was one of the greatest honors I had was when I left. I did my last show. The Speaker of the House, the Admiral of the Navy base, and the church members show up, and they gave me the Ancient Order of the Chamorro Award, which means that the bishop told me this, that God made a mistake and I should have been born Chamorro.
Hey, you can't ask for a better.
No, you can't. You can't.
Wow.
I mean, that touched me, and it was one of the things that got destroyed in the earthquake that in 2002 that got our house in Paso Robles. That was one of the things that I could not save from the
Wow.
Mathis, the house there.
Hmm.
So, but that was one of the biggest honors I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, but you left on top. It sounds like people love you, and you didn't make too many enemies in talk radio. I'm sure some people didn't like you, but That's a gift right there. I know why though, but you have a good way about you. You're funny. You're insightful, and I bet Guam was glad to have you. When are we going back?
Next Thursday.
All right, let me see if I got time.
I said there's people commenting on Guam from us as we're speaking here.
Say that again.
There are people from Guam that are listening right now.
Oh, nice, because I've not seen that because I'm on the StreamYard, which is a different. I don't think it's Well, good. I'm glad. What time is it in Guam right now?
Tomorrow.
See, this is why the man lasted 10 years on Guam Talk Radio. Instant answers.
It's tomorrow.
Wit primary, facts secondary.
18 hours ahead.
Wow. Okay.
And,
well,
and a day ahead. So here it's 1:17.
Yes, Pacific time. Now that's American Pacific time. That just sounds so what's the word? Myopic, or we consider Pacific time. The Pacific's a big ocean. Guam is really Pacific time. It's actually in the Pacific.
There's the chance to attack old white men again. That's all I see.
Well, that's why we were having the show. So now we can rail on you. We're taking comments now. We need to this is a cancel culture show. We just changed it. So
it's been canceled. I've been canceled.
Yeah. Well, you've been very entertaining too, man. That's a great story. Just think about, from being born in Alaska, raised in Hawaii, end up on an island, and befriend the people, get the Order of Chamorro, the highest honor you can get as a civilian, and live to tell about it.
You know what I think is really cool is my mom used to say that she has two sons, me and my older brother, who's a doctor, who, as part of his, internship, went to Palau to do the Doctors Without Borders thing, and he worked there for several months, and then I got to go there and hike and kayak across most of the territory there.
So while he was dealing with sick and distressed people, you were out having a good time, drinking beer and kayaking around, picking up hot chicks. Okay, I understand. Did you help at all? Did you volunteer a little bit?
Are you crazy?
I wouldn't. I would love to. I always love to hear you near a microphone. I wouldn't want to see you near a scalpel or any high octane medicines. So
I don't want to be on either end of either of those right now. So
would you ever consider going back to radio in any form, or do your own podcast?
I didn't realize this until you get into some of these social media groups on Facebook and places like that, where there's I'm a former Hawaii radio broadcasters, Guam radio has-beens, and all these different things, and every jock has that same dream that you're in the studio and the songs are running out before you can get the next song queued up. And the commercials, you can't find the commercials in there.
That doesn't sound like a dream, my friend. That's what we call a nightmare in America.
Oh, it is. Well, it is. It's a nightmare. And it goes like that for 6 hours, however long you're on the air. And then all of a sudden, okay, you're done. Come back tomorrow and do it again. And that's basically what you feel like. You're riding this dragon that you've created, and it meets with different levels of acceptance wherever you go.
Wow, I'm stunned that you've survived. You survived that whole story of starting at 15 and getting through all this stuff. It's great, and I'm glad you didn't have to live your nightmare during the time in the studio with stuff not working. Or maybe you did. I don't know.
I've been through typhoons where you're standing in water behind all that electrical equipment.
That sounds safe.
Down in water up to your knees. Don't drop the microphone. Don't drop it.
Wow, that's a true Guam experience there. But my friend, thank you for jumping on and talking about your radio travails. It sounds like
I got 2 more days of material.
Well, we're going to have you back on for Myk Powell Part 2.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, the Guam early years. We'll come up with something. But
It's always good to see you.
yeah, we're going to do some comedy together one of these days again. I'm sure Mike and I have toured all over the hot spots of America, from Durango, Colorado to Sonoma, California. Play all the major venues.
Oh, all the big ones in Twin Falls.
And he's good at talking, so he keeps me awake during those 4-hour drives. It's just like he's doing a radio time slot. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate the coffee mochas to keep me going while I'm in the car.
Ani said something about the Guam files. The jokes are out there. Well, I'm telling you, we got to go back and we got to go visit Guam. I want to go with you one of these days. I'm going to keep badgering you, and that's the only reason you're on the show. I'm buttering you up, and we'll do a comedy tour in Guam. It'll be like 2 nights. We'll cover the whole island. Everyone on Guam will have seen it.
I will make sure that the trails are ready, and we'll go out. We'll meet the Tautomona, the spirits of the land that were there before us, and we'll have a good time on Guam.
And then you said they get those what's those crabs called? We're gonna have some crab.
Coconut crabs.
Coconut crab. Okay.
Coconut crabs.
Tequila.
The size of Volkswagens.
Well, you know what? I think maybe I'm going to go to Hawaii instead. See where you're hung out there. That would be a nightmare right there. A Volkswagen-sized crab. But thanks
they
for.
have them.
I believe you.
They have them.
If you have some pictures, send them to me. I'll post them.
I'll do that.
Okay. Well, this has been episode 21. Myk Powell. We're going to come up with a good name for this one. This is the live version. We'll put it up on all our usual streaming outlets. I'm Mark Yaffe. He's been Myk Powell. Thank you for joining us for episode 21 on How Does That Happen? Thanks, Mike. See you, everyone.